Alright, so let's talk about the brain. So the brain is divided into three sections: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. So let's talk about the brainstem first. The brainstem is the most inferior part of your brain. That means it's the lowest part of your brain, and that's because it's where the brain hooks up with the spinal cord and the rest of the nervous system. So it's where, if your brain needs to send a message down to one of the neurons, or a neuron needs to send a message up to your brain, it's going to pass through here. The next section is the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is responsible for all your voluntary muscle movements. So if you want to move your arm or leg in a certain way, your cerebellum is going to tell your muscles how to contract in order to get that done. So the next part of your brain is the cerebrum, and this is the biggest part of the brain, and because of that, it's divided into four lobes. So the first lobe is the temporal lobe, and this lobe is responsible, it's near the middle of the brain, and it's responsible for memories and understanding language. So, So the next lobe is the occipital lobe. It is pretty much the most posterior part of the brain, towards the back of the skull, the most dorsal part of the brain, right? And this lobe is basically responsible for taking what you see and processing it into information that your brain can understand. All right, so the next lobe is the parietal lobe, and this lobe is responsible for basically all your perception. So just, making sense of the world, recognizing patterns, spelling. It basically falls all to the parietal lobe. All right, so the final lobe and biggest lobe is the frontal lobe. This lobe includes your motor cortex and your sensory cortex. So it processes senses while also, thinking responsible for real-time thinking, your consciousness, your problem solving, and how you move. That is pretty much all the brain and how it works. You can see the different sections here: the brainstem, the cerebrum, or the cerebellum, and this is the cerebrum, which is split up into all four of its lobes. And I hope you enjoyed.